So, hi, this is Ria from Youth Navigate, and today we're thrilled to welcome Christine, an associate professor at the Yale Child Study Center and the inaugural core faculty member at the Yale Center for Brain and Mind Health. She's here to share her fascinating research titled Examining Potential Iatrogenic Effects of Viewing Suicide and Self-Injury Stimuli. Let's dive straight into some questions. Those of us who aren't familiar with psychology research, how would you describe what the implicit association test is and how you used it here?
Sure. So, in short, the implicit association test, we call it the IAT, is a 5, 6 minute brief sorting task that you complete online on a computer. And what you're sorting are words or images that appear on the middle of the screen. And they ask people to categorize into the correct left or right hand categories as fast as they can. So, if you've ever heard the term implicit biases before, they come from this original design of the IAT, which was created about 25 years ago by social psychologists. And originally, it was designed to pick up on implicit biases about race, for instance, or sex, etc. So it's the same task as 25 years ago, but now adapted to different concepts that clinical psychologists and mental health researchers like myself are interested in. So we're swapping out words that were originally related to, let's say, race or sex or other concepts, and instead replacing it with words or images tied to self-harm or life. Or sadness. And so basically, again, those thoughts and feelings that might be on the minds of people we're trying to better understand and help.
Got it. Now that we understand the implicit association test, our next question is, across the three groups you studied, adults online, college students, and teens in psychiatric hospitals, what were the main similarities and differences you found in how they reacted to the IITs?
So, yeah, we found three main things. First, across our studies, we found people who were presented with these self-harm words and images did not report any increased desire to self-injure or desire to die after completing these reaction time tasks, these IATs. So that, as someone who delivers this and is trying to test this and develop this, was a relief to see. And then second, we noticed that there is a slight decline in mood after completing these tasks. So that decline in mood seemed to be specific to girls and women who are completing this, and more often in response to images that were coming up on the screen rather than words. Something though to note, because mood decline, kind of raised an alarm in me as a researcher and clinician. It might raise an alarm in you. One thing that I want to say is that the decline didn't actually result in a bad or negative mood. It didn't, for instance, tend to make people sad or angry after completing this 5, 6 minute task. It looked more like going from a positive mood before taking the task to a less positive or neutral mood, like going from happy to calm or neutral.
Mhm.
And that's what we observed on average. The third finding was we found these patterns I just shared apply regardless of people's experiences tied to suicide or self-harm, and meaning people who had previously attempted or considered suicide, who were among our research participants, weren't more reactive to these tasks than non-suicidal individuals. And by reactive, again, that's thinking about these iatrogenic effects that we want to be testing to see, are they there? And if they're there, do we need to design or do something different? So far, we've been finding through our work, through publications like this, that there's less of a concern with doing these types of tasks.
Mhm. So that was very interesting to hear. And moving on to our next question, we saw that people's urges to self-injure or die basically stayed the same or even went down a little in some cases. Why do you think those urges didn't actually increase even after being shown images and words specific to self-harm?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, again, as a researcher, youth mental health researcher, and clinician, it's a relief to see.
Hmm.
Um, and not necessarily surprising because we weren't observing an increase in visible increase in suicide risk or self-harm risk when I would observe each of these individuals taking these tasks. But at the group level, it was really nice to see that overall desire to die, desire to self-injure doesn't really move much before and after taking this task. As to why it is, I think a few different things. I mean, one, um, in some ways, these aren't necessarily new concepts that we're introducing to individuals,
Mm,
regardless of their personal history. So let's say some of our suicidal research participants, those who have actually attempted or considered suicide before, these are not new concepts to them. In
mm.
fact, it might be mirroring some of what their internal experiences are, not mirroring in an endorsing way, but just mirroring and kind of not introducing a new concept. So maybe less phased in some ways. And then even for folks who've never experienced suicide or self-harm, um, if you actually pause and think about it, in everyday media, in a lot of what we consume around the world, whether it's explicitly or implicitly, we are being exposed to these types of concepts. And so that might be kind of a part of it, that compared to what we typically are experiencing out in the world, this isn't, yes, it sounds like, we're being very specific about showing words or images tied to a very specific topic that sometimes
Mm.
is taboo, but it doesn't seem to be really changing anyone's desire or attitude towards these topics.
Got it. So I think by now some of us would have this question. So moving on to our last one. Is it ethical to show people images of self-harm even for science and research?
Yeah, I mean, that is the question. And that was very much the question that motivates the work that we do.
Mhm.
And I want to pause on that. I mean, again, we're not, as researchers, we're not actually developing a tool that we're hoping to make money off of, where this is really a tool that we're hoping could improve just generally the quality of assessments and helping people get connected to resources. And so it was there were really no conflicts of interest, but even with that, we did want to answer this question. So my takeaways from what we found, I'll provide my take, but I also just want to bookmark and say I invite you, Ria, and everyone to really continue thinking about this question. It
Mhm.
continues to be something that we are actively revisiting. But long story short, I do think it's ethical to deliver something like the IAT with these types of words or images. And I think it's ethical for a few reasons. First, kind of like I was referencing earlier, we're showing words and images that people are encountering in the real world in all sorts of different contexts: movies, songs, books, everyday conversations with friends and their doctors sometimes. Except that in this case, in the context of a research study, we're asking for consent from every person who's going through this study, and informed consent. We give them a sense of what are the types of things that we're going to have them to do.
Mhm.
And I say that intentionally. We ask, and they always have an option to say no, even after they sign the consent form. Um, and so that's kind of, there's no forcing anyone to do anything. And again, no profit that we're hoping to make off of any of the work that we're doing. Second,
Mhm.
um, we're doing our due diligence to make sure that we're aware of what impact these tasks have, with the intention to stop if we see any evidence that this is not valid or a safe method to move forward. As a researcher, when doing this study that we're talking about, I was very willing to be, no longer delivering these IATs had the results been different. Um, and then third, the long-term benefit is pretty substantial. Ultimately, we want to develop these tools to help lots of different people, adults, youth, and people who care about them, to really make the most informed decisions on what helps them stay here in life and get the resources they need to survive and thrive in the future.
Was very great to hear. So thank you so much, Christine, for today, for sharing your insights and walking us through this important study. We've all learned a lot today, and we hope our listeners are leaving with both clarity and curiosity about where this research goes next. Thank you.
Thank you.